They accuse the IDF of seeking to carry out mass slaughter of civilian casualties. Hello, you've just described your side. You've said nothing about the IDF, you've just described your own side. They say, we're worried that the IDF will commit genocide. Sorry, your side did its darndest to carry out a genocide. Everywhere this rule applies. The Iranian revolutionary government in Iran sends a thank you letter to students in the West for joining the Iranian revolutionary government in its fight against colonialism. The most powerful colonial power in the region is the Iranian revolutionary government that colonized Iran since 1979 and suppressed a great people, that has colonized Iraq, colonized Lebanon, colonized Syria, colonized Yemen, and they accuse Israel of being a colonialist state. The Turkish president, my very dear friend Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President Erdogan accuses Israel of being an occupying power. And again, you get whiplash. Has he ever been to Cyprus? His own country, a NATO member country, still occupies half of another EU member country, Cyprus. When he accuses the Jewish state of being an occupying power, all he's doing is telling us about himself. Now, how, in this long-winded way, am I bringing it back to your question? Because one of the things that was on my mind constantly in the year and a half since the 7th was, what's it got to do with you? What's it got to do with you, the people protesting in Vancouver and Berkeley and Oxford and Sydney, Melbourne? When I was there last year, there's an anti-Israel protest. What's it got to do with you? You're in Australia. Enjoy. And you come back to this same thing, which is that apart from there are obviously Islamic fundamentalists just on the side of Hamas, there are obviously like deeply perverted, crazy people who are just on the side of Hamas. But what is this bigger thing? What is this bigger reservoir that is being spoken to? And I realize that Grossman's law applies, but requires a slight tweak, which is, what have young Western students been brought up to believe, in the Anglosphere primarily, in recent years? They've been told, particularly in America, they've been told that they're guilty by dint of being born in the country they were born in. They're told that they're guilty of genocide. They're guilty of ethnic cleansing. We're told in Britain and elsewhere that we're guilty of the crime of colonialism. We're guilty of slavery, of white supremacy, and racism, and some other things. And I said in my last book, The War on the West, I said this is very, very dangerous because you're setting people up into a moral system you cannot get out of. It's a system of guilt with no possibility of forgiveness, because nobody is alive who did the thing and nobody is alive who could forgive. So all you're saying is you should live your life in an unrelenting cycle of guilt. And I knew that would burst someday, somewhere. And I think it's burst on the question of Israel. And this is why everything they accuse the Jewish state of is what they were told they were guilty of themselves. Look at these students. They are accusing Israel of genocide because they were told they themselves are guilty of genocide. They accuse Israel of being white supremacist. Have you been? They accuse it. Why? Because this is what they were accused of. This is projection on a massive scale. But Israel should not be the projection focus of deeply deluded and badly educated people around the world.
That's a very key insight, that they are trapped in this unforgivable accusation. Since you sort of praised Macron earlier, We have to set the record straight. He recently announced that possibly at a June conference that France would recognize a Palestinian state. And a number of Labour MPs are pushing the government to follow suit. What is your analysis of this idea, and how much would it advance or hinder peace?
The fastest way today to demonstrate you know nothing about the situation in the region is to say that this is why we should push for the creation of another Palestinian state. Just unbelievable revelation of ignorance. Not unheard of. You know, it was on October the 9th or 10th that then Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in an interview, this is why we need to double down on a two-state solution. I'm not surprised in some ways that people say this, because all my life, people of left and right, Labour, Conservative, doesn't matter. They all say the same thing. They all said the answer is a two-state solution. I remember great geniuses like David Miliband saying, why the laughter? I remember great geniuses like David Miliband saying, if we have a two-state solution, it'll unlock all the problems in the region. And I always knew, as many of you will have done, that there is no law of nature that says that if another state, I'll explain why I mean that, but if another state was given to the Palestinians, there is no reason to presume that the economy of Yemen will blossom. Why? You just have another failed Arab state here, at best a sort of proxy front state of the Iranian revolutionary government. Why would that help anyone in Iran or Saudi Arabia to live a better life? Why would that help anyone in Jordan? It makes absolutely no sense. It could be an answer to a part of the question of the Palestinian peoples. It could be. But it does nothing for the region. The idea it does anything for the wider world. Now, this is a presumption of many people protesting against Israel in the last 18 months, is the presumption that for the wider world, something will happen if you create another Palestinian state. And this is what I hear all the time, is you've got to address this fundamental injustice, and if you do, good things will follow. I'm sorry, this is not thinking in the realm of politics. We are in the realm of magic. This is magical thinking. Why would anything else improve in the rest of the world because of another Palestinian state? Macron and the others who say this still, I can only believe, are at this stage being deeply cynical. They will use this excuse to do something else. They know, they must know, that there is no two-state solution on the table anymore. Hamas destroyed it on October the 7th, 2023, because the Palestinians were given a de facto state in 2005 when not only every Jew, every Jewish body was removed from the Gaza. And they had 18 years. 18 years, the life of a child to the end of their formal education. They had 18 years. And what did they do with it? Rockets, war, stealing of vast amounts of wealth. And then October the 7th. So anyone who thinks that if you give them another go, everything will be right, is demonstrating, signaling, blaring out their ignorance.